So we brought this in here. Again, it's always locked, just like we talked about, right? Unless I unlock this, okay? So what I'm going to do here, we talked about the Polygon Lasso Tool, which does just what it says. Makes corner selections, basically. And then the freehand version of this. Okay. And then the two marquee tools, the round and the rectangle marquee tools, okay? There's another one in here, you know, and I'm sure there's a use for it somewhere. I never use it. It's called the Magnetic Lasso Tool. What it does is I follow this outline. You see how it literally magnetizes to the edge of the image? Okay? I've never really used this tool, to be honest. But who knows? See, it's just really not all that accurate. So I just don't really use it that much. But that's basically what it does. Does that make sense? It just sticks to the perimeter. All right? I've never really found a good use for it. Now, let's do this. Let's go here. So we have a tool right here. I got to turn that off. Called the Direct or the Object Selection Tool, which is a pretty nice tool. So up here now in your control bar, like we've talked about, where your most used things in that particular tool pop up, it has rectangle or lasso. Okay, so I'm going to use, let's just try rectangle. So what that means is that in order to use this tool, those are my tool selection things that I can use. Okay, so in this case I think rectangle will work fine, or I could freehand it around it like that. It's probably going to have a little trouble. Oops. Right there with the feet. I just screwed it up. I don't know. And I'm going to go Command or Control C, Control V. Oops, didn't do it. There it is. Okay. And it selected my guy out pretty good. You guys see that? Like if I want to check it, and I always want to check it. So what do we have right now? He's sitting on a transparent layer, correct? How do we know that? Because he's got a checkerboard behind him, okay? What I usually like to do is I go up here. Now, all your okay, so this is my Swatch Palette, which again, all my palettes live under Windows. So it's color, or I think it's just swatches. Swatches right there. So it's just your basic Swatch palette. Look how it's broke down, which I don't like actually. But you can make your own palette. We'll talk about that later. So I'm going to go in here and pick a mid-value gray under grayscale. The only thing I like about this is the grayscales right here. Although they should have had a warm and a cool grayscale, I think. So let's just pick, I don't know, that one. Then I'm going to go back to this layer, and look, I can't drag it underneath that background layer. Why is that? That's right. So until I unlock that, now I can go boom, right? Let's turn this guy off again. And what I do, go up here to Edit, Fill, and it's just always on my foreground color. I usually use a hotkey for this, but I want you to know where it is. And for now, we're just leaving that on foreground color. There's other options here, but foreground color. So it's always going to pick whatever's this foreground palette or swatch says. I'm going to say okay, and it filled it. Why do I do that? That's actually a really good selection. This right here needs to go, but it's not getting a lot of fringe. Okay, so let's try something else here so we can kind of talk about that. Let's try it like this. Let's go to the Magic Wand tool. So you can see what a dirty selection this is, right? Lots of fringing. See it all around his hat? That's fringing. Does that make sense? Now, with the look at this. That's a mess. What I would use this for if I had a reasonably clean background and I was doing like comping. Where I was just, and I'm going to show you guys this when we get to the first big project. Okay, so that's the direct selection tool. Let's do one more thing here. So I should be able, and I usually use an image, and I'll try and find it, of a girl hiker like in a jungle. It's got a very complex background, and it separates it really well. So this can separate out of a pretty complex background, okay? Now the other way to select this, let's go back to our, here it is, object selection tool right there. There's the lasso. Let's just try it with the rectangle. Oops. By the way, if I hold, when I'm doing a selection like that, if I hold the space bar, I can move the selection around, which is hugely helpful. I'll let go of it, and hang on, I'm still holding on to this. Let me do this again. So it picked up a little bit of this foot down, or the shadow here, but other than that, not too bad. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Let's look at on one more thing. So here now you've got a little more complex selection. Why? Because you got hair here, or fur. So let's see what it does. Not bad. Now, so let's do this. Control C, Control V, turn this off. Let's do the same trick. Unlock this one. Not too bad. Now, here's what I'd have to fix, and I'll show you guys this later. It's not getting all the individual hairs in there. Didn't get his feet. See that? It's got a lot of funkiness going on there. So let's try this again. Because there's two tools here we're talking about, basically. Let's get rid of this guy. Let's go back here again. What do you need?
Is there a way to like invert it? So like for example,
yes.
So like each time.
I'm going to go over that right now. Yes, you can invert it. Okay, so let's look at, okay, so let's do this again. Let's go up to object selection. This time let's try it with the lasso tool. Now, the good thing about this, and I'm using a mouse right now, I usually use a pen for this, so I'm not going to be all that accurate. If I can get the selection a little closer, then Photoshop doesn't have to figure out as much stuff. And I don't know if it's going to make any difference or not. Yeah, it did a little bit. Okay, but now let's look here. If you look here, it's still not getting that foot. Do you see that? And a little bit of this. So what I'm going to do is you got another tool right here, okay? And it's called Quick Mask. So I'm going to click that, and it gives me this, okay? So this is the mask, okay? Or the selection, I should say. So I'm going to take an eraser, and I'm just going to erase that foot out so it's not part of being, you know, covered or whatever. And I could come in here and kind of tweak this select. I'm going to do a bad job on it just for speed. I would also probably use a softer brush. So I would go up here, again to my control bar. I drop this down, and there's a size. This just makes my brush bigger or smaller, and then there's a hardness one. I'm going to pull it way down. And you can see it, the little icon got softer, so it's a little more like an airbrush now. Then I'm going to go a little bigger. Now I'm getting a little soft. It's probably a little too soft, but that's all right. And I'm going to take this out. And then I'm going to click back. So I can do two things. I can erase this mask out, or I can grab a paintbrush. And then before I click out of it, I've got a better selection. Okay. Now, once you start making a lot of these complex selections, so let's say I have the selection, okay? I might have a whole bunch of these selections in my document, and I'm going to be going back and forth. Okay, so if I make a complex selection, I don't want to make that selection again. And I'm never going to get it exactly the same, ever, right? So all you got to do is you go up here to select, and you go save selection right there. It will ask you to name it. It's weird, it's not giving, oh, here it is. I'll say lion. And I go, okay. And then I deselect it. 2 hours later, I go, oh, I need to reselect that. I go select, load selection, lion. And there it is. Does that make sense? Really simple, okay? Other section layers. Okay. So all that makes sense, yeah? Pretty simple. We'll play with this in a second. Now, let's go back to this. Okay, so now we're in this layers palette, okay? If I want to get rid of a layer, I want to unlock this. And I can rename it. I can double click on the name and rename it. I usually put ORI for original. And then I'm going to give it another layer. Okay, so I go down here to this little plus button. By the way, your palettes, well, oh, somebody asked me about inverting. Hang on, I want to do this real quick. So if I make a selection, let's go back to that lion. And let's do this again. Let's go object selection. I'm just going to use the rectangle tool. I'm going to go Command or Control C, Control V. Okay, so if I go Control C and then V, it's going to give me that, right? That makes sense, correct? Yeah? Okay, so let's go back to our selection. What if I want the background? Then I go up here, and this is easy because we're talking about a selection, so it's under select. And I'm going to go, and then here's the hotkey right here, Shift Control I. I'm going to go inverse, and now it just inversed the selection, and if I go delete, oh, there it goes. I had to go to the move tool. I don't know why. And what did it do? It accomplished the same goal, but I grabbed the background and deleted it. Does that make sense? Okay, so we got our layers. One other thing, you guys. If I go, so here's the background color. Let's make the background color noticeable. Let's make it blue. So I'm going to shift these right here, or I can hit X, and I just put my foreground color in the background. So now, while this is on background, if I come in here and I knock something out, it's going to fill it. In this case, now it's a foreground color. Let's say background. Usually it fills it with the background color. It's just going to fill it with that background color, and if you notice, it's on the same layer because it's locked. I don't want to work on the same layers. Also, let's see if I can do it this way. I'm going to go up here to my crop tool or hit C, and let's make this a little bigger. Yeah, see what it did? So it's going to use that background color to fill in that space because this is flat. It's not transparent anymore. If I unlock it, if I go here now and I unlock this layer, and I do the same thing with the crop tool, now it's just going to give me a transparent. It's just floating on a transparent layer. Make sense? Okay. It's locked when it's when you don't have that unlocked. Okay, so I'm going to put a layer on top of this. Okay, so you can see I can just move these layers around in whatever order I want. In this case, I want this here. Up here, I have opacity. So if I take this layer here and I go and I drop it down, it just drops the opacity, just like it says. And it's got some other things up here we'll talk about later, and it's got a few things down here we'll start talking about this week, okay? So let's go here, and I'm just going to fill this with a color. So let's go blue. And I'm going to fill this layer with blue. And then maybe that's good enough. And then what you have here, and this is going to become really important, you guys, you have overlays there. They're called layer blends, okay? What that is going to do is when you have a layer up here and a layer here, this one, there's various, I can't explain each one of them because they're just kind of abstract a little bit. I know one or two exactly what they do. What it's going to do is it's going to change that layer into a blend with the next layer, and that's always going to be affecting each other. So depending on what I have here, it affects what this does to it because they're interrelating, okay? They're going to become really important because they're just a really good tool, okay? And we'll use it in quite a few different ways, okay? So if I go through here, there's darken, there's multiply, there's screen, and I start to get all these interesting things going on. And sometimes it's a really nice start to something. Like this one. Okay, that might be a nice start for something if I was doing something post-apocalyptic or something. You know what I mean? I might use that as a starting point, okay, and start painting into it, okay? And you can see it's on blue, but then this subtract does that, right? You could probably find a description of what all of them do. I just run through them whenever I'm using them. This one kind of really reduced it except for those blue pops. Super oversaturated. Monochromatic-y. Luminosity doesn't do anything. And I might go, I'm going to try something here, hang on. So in this case, I'm going to change this color a little bit. I think it's too intense. And I'll show you guys this, what I'm doing right now later. So let's get a little more of maybe that. And let's try this again. Like even there maybe. What if I want to go in now? Let's try it here. And then I'm going to pull back this opacity a little bit because it's a little dark. And let's say I get it to about there. And then I can start to come in here. I'm going to do this really half-ass. And let's get a little bit of warm light. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm just going to pick this because I'm going to adjust it, so it's not going to matter. And maybe I can see where I can go with this. Let's do it up here. I want to reduce it way down. I can come in here. And I don't like that color, so I would adjust it, but I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. And I could come in here, I could grab my, this is going to be screaming loud, but I'll adjust it. I'm going to grab another brush. I got to load my brushes on here. Let's use a hard round for now. And I'm on another layer. And I could start to give this thing like a helipad thing up there and start to light all this stuff up. Does that make sense? This is at 40%, so I want it more. And start lighting up the windows, and I could start creating a night scene. Does that make sense? With an overlay, okay? I do this all the time when I'm doing digital painting. This time, I'm going to go right here to my gradient tool, okay? And right up here, so you see it right there. I use this one a lot. It's the color, and then you can see it as the dot or the checkerboard, which means it's color to transparent. There's also in your basics, there's foreground to background color. There's color to transparent. There's black to white. There's all these different ones, right? But I'm going to use this one, and I'm just going to go. I'm going to hold Shift too because it'll constrain it up and down, and I'm going to click and drag. And now it's only, let's change this color to a warm color. Hang on. Yeah, like that. And now let's do our overlay deal. And now I get a whole different thing because now, by the way, guys, we've been talking about pulling these colors out of our swatches here. You can also click your swatch and you'll get the color picker. So what this tends to do, that's getting more saturated. That's keeping color. As I go over here, it gets grayer. As I go down here, it's getting blacker and grayer. As I go over here, it's just getting to be a darker value of the color. So it sort of goes, if I go right up, it goes, saturated. Over here, it's adding white. Down here, it's adding basically black. Does that make sense? And then I can go through here, through this, and go through my color spectrum. Okay. What these usually are, the thing that's a little dangerous about kind of starting on the computer if you don't have experience.